Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com. Thank you for joining this Community IT Podcast Part 2. You can find Part 1 in your podcast feed if you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Thinking about those technology strategic plans is important, even more so now than then.
I want to welcome everyone to the Community IT webinar, Equity Guide for Nonprofit Tech. My name is Carolyn Woodard. I'm the Outreach Director for Community IT. I'll be the moderator today.
My name is Tristan Penn, and I use he, him pronouns, and I'm Navajo, and I'm the Director of Equity and Accountability at N10. Okay, so let's talk about funding really quick, too. And I kind of alluded to it a bit with those grants that were like, oh, we need the money. And then we now we don't know how to implement it. We painted ourselves into this corner. I think a few things, if you are in conversation and partnership with any philanthropic organization, a foundation, these are good guidelines to have in your back pocket to ask of if you have not only a grantee funder relationship, but an outside, hey, we work in the same community. I'm very familiar with you all, and we run into each other online or offline, and I happen to get, wind of more opportunities for funding, or I'm a part of a community team to inform how they're going to fund. That's oftentimes we get those asks, right? So investing appropriately in technology, and that means being more, as a funder, being more succinct and clear and giving depth to technology in whatever, funding you're giving out, and not just it being technology, 30%, 10K, that's it. What is that? How are we supposed to tease that out? Providing and suggesting to funders that there needs to be much more explanation, and also in that potential grant, being able to line out how this grant is also going to fund the contingency that we talked about, the technology strategic plan, or the long-term security of these tools that we're going to have to buy to implement this work program tool. So thinking about that when you have access to those funders is important. I think also just personally and organization-wide of investing in whatever technology you're folding in and doing it, again, same way, following that strategic plan that you have. Is it timely? Are we doing this because my mom used to tell me this, when we were out shopping, I'd roll up to the cart with a toy, and she's like, is this a want or a need? And it's it's always just a want. So really asking yourself that, or, organizationally, what is this a want because we're feeling the pressure that there is no pressure, because it's shiny and new? Or is this something we actually do need that would enhance our work, our impact, and our mission? I think also, a few other things in terms of funding are support experimentation and failure. And that is specifically the failure piece. When oftentimes I consult with other organizations, when they bring me in to be we're doing this project management piece, we need some structure and guidance on how to change into it to offer insight on decision making and project planning. Oftentimes I'll tell them, where are you folding in failure? Where are you folding in failure into your work? And I know that's harsh on a lot of people's ears, but one thing I will offer is that what program or project that you have ever done hasn't had a hiccup, hasn't had failure. And if you are expecting perfection across the board, you will disappoint yourself. fold in failure into your work, in your implementation, and into your whatever tool that you're funding, and make sure that not only is it folded in and expected, because it will happen, we're human, that's what happens, but also that there's no punitive strings attached to any failure or a specific person that it is. It just didn't work out. We knew there was going to be some barriers and hiccups that we were unaware of. And being okay with that and releasing people from this, like, oh my gosh, we failed. I'm going to get a horrible write up. That can make people show up in a better way when you fold in failure and it's expected. Into whatever thing, tool that you're funding. So that is funding. Corporate funding. Don't conflate produce donation with cash funding or product donation, excuse me. Don't conflate it. So if they're, again, back to the iPads in the closet, product donating, if they're donating that, closet full of iPads, that's not the same as like a cash donation. And also, like, if it's just a straight up donation, it's hard to say no to donations as a nonprofit, but also this is like where the rubber hits the road of being like, we thank you for this donation of whatever tech that you're providing, but we don't accept tech without any sort of safety contingency that's folded in to that work. It's what we talked about earlier too, creating the contingency of whatever tech or practice or training is going to be involved. So if they're not willing to provide like a staff person, like 10 hours of their month to check in, to make sure that things are updated, not only in the training and professional development, but the tool itself, then we can't, like, in good conscience and in good faith, implement this tool that you're generously giving us. We just can't. It's not possible. Giving for impact and not visibility. Again, a lot of my stories sit with Boys and Girls Club, and I love Boys and Girls Club, but a lot of times it's like where I really took some licks and like really learned some hard lessons. And this is one of them where you're at the club and kids are, everywhere. And then like a bunch of suits walks in. A suits walk in with the executive director or CEO, and you make eye contact with the CEO and they're like, this is so-and-so from Columbia Bank. This is so-and-so from Sunflower Bank, and they're the president. And they wanted to they wanted to donate stuff, and they said they showed up today, and so I brought them here so they could volunteer with some kids. And now you're like, okay, this is for visibility because there's cameras everywhere. The comms person's there all of a sudden who's never been in the club. But like I say that because that felt not good. That felt not good as a staff member, and that shouldn't feel good to any of those staff members that walked in with those suits. But oftentimes where we have the blinders on of like, it's money and it's donated and we can't take no for an answer, or we can't say no. And so oftentimes you put staff in unsavory positions because you want it to be visible, but there's no preparation or forethought with it. So being able to have your boundaries when you're interacting with corporate entities is super important when you're creating that like technology strategic plan. And I'm going to go over a few other ways, and this is the last section. And so we have about 4 minutes. So I'm going to like try and breeze through this because I want to create time for Q&A. And we're going to roll into creating technology. So this is more so like if you are interacting like with a salesperson or anyone, or you're creating your own, there are some pieces with that. But if you have an opportunity to be a part of advising, oh, we're creating this tool for nonprofits. Perfect. I have some opinions. I have many. Making sure that you're following ethical sales guidelines and prioritizing community outcomes and using, more importantly, I love the phrase community outcomes here because oftentimes the tell is people are like, oh, we have this tool that's specific for nonprofit work. And they use very like corporate jargon that I've never heard nonprofit people use. And so I know there's like exceptions, but also, I always use community members. And so a lot of times they'll be like your clients. And yes, there are nonprofits out there that use, but it's not, I feel like it's usually community members. And so when they say clients, I'm like, how informed are you in creating this tool? So prioritizing those community outcomes for, any of those tools that are trying to get sold to you, and investigating the price of it as it relates to you and your nonprofit. So is the price equitable? Is it scaled to your budget? Do they have a sliding scale with like, okay, if your budget's from like 500K to 1 million, here's what we're offering. And also it's the same product. It's not changed as it goes up with your like budget. That oftentimes that happens. And so I think another piece of the sales and marketing piece, as you're getting like sold all of these like flashy new tools, is making sure that if you are getting offered like some sort of steep discount or a pro bono uh, add-on of like, because you're a nonprofit, we're going to do this, making sure that the terms of that match your own technology strategic plan, and being like, well, you said the terms were like only for 6 months, but actually, according to us, we in our like guidelines and policy, we need you to provide that training and like constant like security update like for 2 years in, and stating that and naming that. And oftentimes that's when like, the deal falls through or whatever. And so that's what I mean, at the bottom of this list, being intentional with pro bono services is like, you know, my grandpa always used to say it's, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And like, for the most part in this scenario, if it's free, there should be some like deep and steep questioning about about what is getting offered and from the people who are like cutting the deal. So a few things on like the creating piece. Um, and let's see here. We talked about embracing nonprofit diversity. That was at the beginning of the beginning of the presentation. But I think one thing that does stick out to me in implementing any of these like creating technology for the sector or for your community is oftentimes it feels as though when you've created something, we need to keep it here. We need to keep it within the organizational walls. No one can have it. We have a competitor across town that we can't share that with. And I think that feast or famine type of mentality of that like very guarded, this is our stuff and we don't want big brothers or big sisters to get a hold of this is so detrimental to the sector. And so oftentimes all it takes is like you being like, I think this other organization that does very similar work to us could benefit from this. And I just want our community to like thrive. And I don't really particularly care what organization they're doing it with, And I think having that like spirit of, camaraderie, community is important. And it's, oftentimes it gets lost in specific places. So being able to, if you have something that you've created, sharing it with similar organizations across the country or across your community is important. I think lastly, and then I'll stop and we'll go into Q&A, is treating projects as ongoing processes. So similar to folding in failure, but also like treating a project as an ongoing process, and it doesn't really have an end. So what is the 1 year after we've launched? What is the 1 year checkup? What is the 1.5 year checkup? Is there like an immediate checkup that we need to do? And what is the process for continually checking in on those things? Will serve you better as opposed to just leaving it, we implemented it and like, fingers crossed, I hope it goes well. Like that's something that I think, I've been a part of. And, as a lesson learned, I was like, I didn't check in on this and it's been a year and this is falling completely apart. And that's, failure that I own. I was in my 20s, but like also like, that's something that like is super important, and it provides a lot of like growth for yourself, but also like it's important because it impacts the communities that you serve. So I'm going to end here and I'm going to go into not the discussion, but I'm going to go into Q&A. Maybe I didn't have a Q&A slide. I thought I did, Carolyn, but apparently I didn't. So.
All right. Hope everybody can see that. If you do have questions, go ahead and get them in while we have Tristan here. We can ask him. I have a quick question. Well, It's kind of a quick, but maybe a big question. So I noticed in your presentation and your examples, a lot of the examples that you used
Hmm.
included power dynamics and
Mm.
particularly power
Hmm.
imbalances.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're
Hmm.
getting a pro bono donation
Hmm.
or when the suits are walking in to your Boys and
Hmm.
Girls Club
Yeah.
and you said, you feel like you can't say no
Yeah.
to those. And I feel like that is like a kernel of this equity
Yeah.
question. So I wondered
Hmm.
if you could talk a little bit more about, you gave us a lot of great examples of it
Hmm.
happening, that
Hmm.
you're in a power
Yeah.
imbalance. Do
Mhm.
you, through your work and through this equity guide, do you have advice for the people listening
Yeah.
about, I want to say fighting that, but like
Yeah.
strategies to
Yeah.
take on those situations where
Yeah.
you are not in a position of power and that
Hmm.
is creating an inequity in the
Hmm.
situation with technology?
Um, and that's such a great question, and I have an answer, multiple answers. And also, like, I just want to acknowledge that, like, it's harder for some people to like have tough conversations, specifically when there's a power dynamic involved too. I am not one of those people. I've always been one of those, like, you know, I would say very social people that's been like, this is wrong. And I don't know why this is, regardless of who it is. And I feel like it's become more honed as I've gotten older and a bit more sweeter and respectful, but still firm. And I think that really, it starts with you. And is that something that is within you to do? And when I'm helping facilitate groups or like discussion where I'm not a staff member, I'm just there as a facilitator. Oftentimes, I have the opportunity to say, I want to name a power dynamic in this room. And that is that the C-suite is here and all of the staff members who are experiencing this thing are here. And there may be folks who don't feel comfortable. That is, speaking their full truth. And I think it really does just start by naming that power dynamic. And that can like exist in like staff meetings, but it can also exist in, maybe not, in the moment, but also, like, I think it exists across a lot of different, like, categories too. Oftentimes, I was the only Black person working in an all-white organization. And so you know, I feel like at times I didn't really have the safety to say what I needed to say. Um, and also, I think that encourages folks who are, part of the majority, who are white, in that example, to be able to speak up because there's a lot less at risk for them too. Um, and I think that's something that like folks have to be comfortably uncomfortable with speaking up and naming power dynamics, because that's the whole point of like a hierarchy is
Hmm.
to like not name the hierarchy, but it
Hmm.
but it for it to be heavily implied.
Hmm.
And so I think that really is, you know, being able to like name it is important. But I also want to just like call out, if you're a part of like a marginalized community and you're like one of one in whatever organization you're in, being able to like, I tell people this, specifically folks of color, that are, the only person in their like white nonprofit. It's like, if you continually are running into this mental calculus, it's not worth it. Get out. You don't have to speak up in these meetings. And I know that's a luxury to be like, I'm leaving, I'm quitting, or whatever, or I'm shifting to another organization. But also, long term, I've been there where it weighs on you and it's much more taxing, to continue to stay in an organization where you are running into both like organizational issues, but also just like for yourself, the anxiety that comes with that too. And so I always quote like, this rap song, it's called No Role Models, but it's like, don't save them. They don't want to be saved. Like, and so I think you have to do that calculus of like, is the juice worth the squeeze for me, like, bringing it up? Happy to, but if this place is going to fall on like ears that aren't listening, then I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to name that power dynamic. It's not worth it. So
Yeah.
I think it's like a both and of like, yes, name it, but also that calculus of risk for folks who are marginalized is much higher. Like that
Yeah.
job may be on the line for them as opposed to like one of their white colleagues doing it. Or like if it's for a queer person, it's like that calculus and like that like risk may be higher for them than like a cis hetero person. And so I think there's a lot of dynamics that inform how you name a power dynamic or don't name it.
Yeah. Yeah. You might not have the job. You might not get the grant. You might not
Yeah.
have the donor. So,
Yeah.
but I really, that stood out to me of what you were
Mhm.
talking about, maybe more to think about. And
Mhm.
the other thing that I think you said a couple of
Mhm.
times was the learning piece. And nonprofits
Yeah.
are learning organizations for the most
Mhm.
part, but sometimes we can get so busy with what we're
Mhm.
doing that
Mhm.
we don't spend that time on making sure everyone knows how to use the technology, everybody's
Yeah.
onboarded correctly. But then
Yeah.
also maybe there are some learning opportunities as well around equity and power
Mhm.
and being able to name what's happening and, around the technology as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that definitely.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to go quickly
No,
through
that's
this.
fine.
But I
I
could
ran
talk to you
long.
all day, basically. But I
Happy
want to go
to.
quick over our learning objectives, which I think you hit on. And definitely if the people will download this equity guide, you like crunch tons of information into this tiny little presentation. So I definitely recommend people to go look at the full thing. But we wanted to understand equity issues impacting nonprofits and technology, learn how funding equitable nonprofit technology ensures better outcomes. Like you said, have that strategic plan, be able to go to your funder with this strategic
Mhm.
plan and be able to identify why getting a short-term something or a donated something doesn't fit with what makes sense for your organization. Discuss the role of nonprofit technology in disrupting existing inequitable models, and learn the role of your board in tech equity. We didn't quite get to that one, but there's a whole other report PDF that you can get with some questions for your board members to talk
Mhm.
about technology and equity. So that will help people. I know we're almost at time, so I'm trying
Mhm.
to be respectful of the people who have joined us, but I do want to invite you back to our first webinar of 2026, which will be January 21st from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific on Zoom. This is our annual nonprofit tech roundtable. We have our experts from Community IT, having your smart friends who know a lot about technology and a lot about nonprofits, and you can sit around. They're going to tell us what the trends were, what they're expecting trends to be, and you can ask them your questions. So it's great opportunity and experience, and it's very popular every year. So I'm always excited to moderate it. And this year we are adding in our Director of Client Services, Jenny Huff-Talon, and she is just amazing. She has this wealth of experience talking to thousands of our clients over the years about what they're worried about, what's happening, what they're seeing, what they're doing, what they're preparing for. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm going to drop the link in there, but you can also find it on our site at communityit.com. It's Wednesday, January 21st at 3 p.m. And of course, you can sign up for any other webinars there, and there's lots of free resources as well. You can join us on Reddit in just a minute. I'm sharing that as well. It's r/nonprofit IT management. And I just want to thank you, Tristan, so much for your time. An hour of anyone's time is a gift. And we appreciate you giving us the benefit of your experience, walking us through the concerns that are in this equity guide. And I hope our audience can use it. And I just want to thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being here and happy to talk about, everything under the sun as it relates to tech. And so happy to like be in dialogue with you, Carolyn. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. And I was saying, I know you have a whole other presentation on AI, and
Yes.
I would love to have you back in 2026, and we'll talk about all of the equity
Oh,
and
yes.
power dynamics and
Put me in.
security and trust issues with
Yeah.
AI, all of the AI tools. So I look forward to that as well. Thank you, everyone who joined us in the audience. Thank you, those who are listening on the podcast, seeing us on YouTube. And we will see you in January in 2026. Thank you, Tristan.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining this Community IT Podcast Part 2. You can find Part 1 in your podcast feed if you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.